What's good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Take Time Out with Trey. This is your host, Tre Mosley, and today, um, if you want to know how to tell a good story, well, we have, at least I feel, one of the premier storytellers in our business. Thom Pinto is a narrator, first and foremost. He will weave a story out of anything. I think he could probably get the phone book and go through A through Z and give you a story for each listing. Um, before we begin and get into that, here's some of Tom's work.
In a town built on fame and fortune, a spirit haunts its now empty streets. His presence is felt in the Arctic temperatures, the vicious winds, and the scorching summers. By the time the war ended, 600,000 Americans had lost their lives, nearly 10% of the country's population, and 16,000 Union soldiers were buried in Arlington. In the 4+ decades since Manson's been imprisoned, nobody has successfully pinned any additional murders on him. But now, one retired cold case detective has made it his mission to see justice done. So the Pintos moved from borough to borough, from the Lower East Side to Brooklyn, and then in 1927 to Lawrence, Long Island. High up above the flytraps, fellow carnivores, the pitcher plants, are a little more proficient. Once on the lip, the insect is as good as dead. But it isn't just about the number of breaths these brave people have left. It's about the moments that take their breath away. No one knows better than they do that when you have idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, every breath counts.
Mr. Thom Pinto.
Trey, thank you for the ask. It's good to, it's funny. It's I think the last time we saw each other in Atlanta, we're like going, oh, in other directions there. It's like, so finally we get a little one-on-one time this way just to kind of catch up on everything. And I'm also glad that you were able to squeeze me in because I know you have something going on after this here, and always happy to accommodate a busy man. How's that?
I appreciate it, sir. Likewise. So, I think what I want to start off with, um, you come from an era in voiceover where many of the luxuries that we have now was not afforded. Home studios, sending a file electronically. Um, and I've talked to other uh talent who've been doing this 20 or even 30 plus years, like, oh, you guys got it made. You get to sit in these nice cushy home studios and do the thing, and we had to drive into Burbank, or we had to drive into to Studio City. uh Tell us what that was like, because I can appreciate that, because sitting here all day, it's cool and I love what I do, but I don't know. For me, it's something to where you get to go into a studio, you get to be around the creation. It's like an artist. Sure, he could send you the picture of what he's done, but if you're there while the canvas is in front of you and you're being able to paint and create it, it's totally different. So talk about how it was, being able to go into a studio. You're there with the, maybe perhaps the writer of the copies there. You're in the booth, the director's there. Like, give us, how all that was, uh, for in that era and until now.
I think the biggest difference is because since it's long form, it was that much better to be there in person because you knew you weren't going to be in and out of there in 15 minutes. And look, let's face it. I mean, let's say in the days of even going over to CBS or ABC to do a promo, you were, you were sitting there longer than you were behind the mic. You'd be sitting there
Yeah.
waiting for so-and-so to get done with their stuff. And they say, okay, you're up next, whatever show that I might be working on. Okay. And bada bing, bada bang, bada boom. I mean, they got to get it done. I mean, you talk to Cipriano, he'll tell you the same thing about, CBS, whatever. But the long form like this was a luxury, in my humble opinion. I didn't
Hmm.
mind the fact that it was a 2-hour session because I felt like we could really nurture the 1st act, the 2nd act, the 3rd act, the 4th act. Um, Also, what's interesting, Trey, and I don't know because we're both, and yes, there's a lot of advantages to the home studio. I have to catch myself today, and I'll circle back in a second, but I have to catch myself of, "Oh, I need to take a break. Ooh, I need to stand up, stretch my back. I need to go
Yeah.
outside and get a little, oxygen." Whereas in that era, you would be going, let's even forget the documentary. I mean, you might go to a casting house in person. Then you figured you had a half an hour to get over to LA studios. You're there a little early. You're able to go in, have a little nosh. Oh my God, you're running to your good buddy Rob Paulson and he makes you laugh and this and that. And then,
Yeah.
oh, okay, now it's time for me to go in and do my thing. So I miss the social aspect. I miss the social aspect. But for TV narration, that was also good for me because I'm a person who likes working to picture. Now, some people
Yeah.
go, "Ah, that messes me up." Well, in this day and age, and the last time I worked a picture, and it's not often, was during the pandemic.
Mhm.
I think I was 21, where uh, there I was, and I had a 90-inch monitor 10 feet away from me. I could see
Wow.
the time code and
Yeah.
I've got my script here, and you know how that is. Then you can sense, oh, the music. Oh, wow, how slow is that bison moving through the snow? I mean, it
Yeah.
automatically connects you. So, working to picture is a benefit of doing it in a person. Now, people will say, well, there is a certain program that you can have and you use it with Pro Tools. And guess what? That's good.
Yeah.
But I'm done with Pro Tools. That's number one. And number two, the lack of locking. Like they'll go, "Oh, we're not locked. Oops, Source Connect isn't locked now. Oh, this isn't locked. We have to go back and redo it." I think at that time when I was at one union in San Francisco, which by the way is a fabulous. I don't want to. This was nothing on them, but even the engineer Joby Deal said, if we just didn't have a bunch of dropouts and stuff like that, you probably would have been done in a little more than an hour.
Wow.
So. Uh, Going in person, part social, part and I like what you said. You feel the buzz. You feel like you're part of the team.
Yeah.
You shake hands with the producer. The client might be back there. "Oh, we really like your voice," and you get a chance to, curry some favor with that client because, yeah, man, client maybe wants to bring your ass back, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
you're able to work a little bit of your social magic that way. So that's what's different about that. I think from the audition process, though, there are pluses and minuses. And I'll just say, if I was with SBV during the days of going in person, I signed with Atlas in 2000. So I was doing stuff with them remotely, directing
Yeah.
myself. But I would still go into SBV live and you'd have a booth director and you'd sit and there'd be a lobby full of people. And there's something about that energy when you got a lot of talented people around you that suddenly you're going, okay, well, and you also knew that you couldn't spend a lot of time in there. So you had to kind of raise your game to be on the
Yeah.
money. Extra takes, maybe. How about this? Um, to the booth director. I'd like you to take the top third from take 3, the bottom third
Oh.
from, you know what I mean? You couldn't do
I know
you
where you're
I
going with
know,
that.
you couldn't do that.
Yeah.
We can now, but of course, sometimes to a fault, we can go down the rabbit hole of, Frankensteining a take. So, there's pluses and minuses to both. The biggest plus, though, I do miss the social aspect. Sitting around, you and I could sit there between sessions, shoot the breeze, talk about how the Niners are gonna whoop the Raiders. Oh, I'm sorry.
Hey,
Uh,
hey, hey now.
I'm just I'm sorry. I won't do that to you. Anyway, I'm sorry I got long-winded, my man.
No, that's all good. That's why we're here, man. And one of the things that I remember watching, just videos of um, various actors on various shows, especially like cartoons and stuff
Mhm,
like that. Ensemble casts. Um, I feel an extra oomph when I book something and they say, "Hey, we can record you from home." I'm like, "No, I'll see you in Burbank in 2 days." I wanna get out there. I want to. I mean, I love Vegas. Vegas is a great city, but again, getting out the house,
yep,
if I'm driving there, so I get a good 4 hours of scenery, going through the mountains.
mhm.
If I'm flying there, it's like, "Alright, I'll see you in an hour and 15 minutes." And now, as much as I detest the 405, um, and the 101, it's something about being in that LA traffic and I'm on my way to the studio in the Uber or Lyft. I start to feel like, all right, I'm almost there.
I
I could
know.
just be in the back seat of the car chilling, but it's like I'm here, I'm in town. If I have time, if I stay for a couple of days, because sometimes I'll come in, do what I do, and then just fly right back out
Right, of
because,
course.
a rubber band trip, I call it. But if I say drive in and the session's that Friday, I may leave even, Wednesday or Thursday, take my travel rig and say, "Hey, I'm in town for a couple of days." May call you, may
Sure
call
you
Mara
can.
or some of my friends, and let's grab a bite, then go work. And like, well, you know what? Now it's the weekend. I don't really have to rush home. And, again, just being around folks and
I love your
feeling that.
attitude about that because, I will say, and Carrie Tom Basian and I have talked about this, she actually
Hey,
does
Carrie.
something funny. Love Carrie. Carrie says I don't know if she still does it, but she said, "Every Friday, I'm going to get dressed and wear makeup, even though I'm just" she wants to pretend like what it was when you would go into a
Yeah.
studio, but there is something about the buzz, and so that's when my agents, when my San Francisco agents will say, the Clorox people would like you." Go, "Say no more. I'm there. 90-minute drive for me. What's wrong with crossing the Oakland Bay Bridge, going
Yeah.
into San Francisco, and after the session, going to the ferry building and, having, some clams or something like that from the wharf?" You get the whole experience. My wife will come with me too, and
Yeah.
we'll do that. So the
Make it a day.
the social aspect, and like you said, you get a chance to see something like I'm sure you're talking about the lovely Mara, as in Mara and Mara Junot, right?
That is correct.
You
Yes,
know,
sir.
and I will also say that while I do bring my rig, I also I don't mean to make this a commercial, but the voice caster in Burbank,
Mhm.
they have such a reasonable rate. They've got the booth. They'll even direct you a little bit or if you want their opinion on something, and you'll do it. I like the accountability of
Good
someone
to know.
on the other side of the glass. And, dude, how about $20 for 20 minutes?
Really?
Whether it's an audition or a session. So if you're tracking for one of your affiliates or one of your promo clients,
Yeah, my promos aren't
you
that long.
exactly. That's self-directed.
I had no
Anyway, I didn't
idea.
mean to turn that into that, but
No, that's a good shout out to them.
yeah, th
Wow.
and also, you know what else? Because they provide a lot of auditions from time to time, I'm happy to throw a tiny bit of money into their pocket since they're doing it for me. Plus, they provide a great service,
Yeah.
and you're also close enough by. You're about 10 minutes away from the Monte Carlo Deli.
Oh, boy.
I know, your next time home, if you're over do you record sometimes at Mark Grau when you're doing, things?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've been
okay,
to the studio over there
exactly.
too.
Well, I mean, seriously, you're just about 5 minutes away. You can tell the Uber say, "I need to go down to this place first," and you go to Monte Carlo Deli, and, between the sandwiches and, the eggplant parm or whatever you want, or just a plate of meatballs, and then you get your arse back up Hollywood Way, back up to the Burbank Airport. Anyway,
Wow. I will
by
keep
the way,
that in
I
mind.
love your sports work, man. Just
Oh, thank
I
you, man.
just love your sports work, you combine your talent with your passion, and I'm always telling people, like, about TV narration. Narrate the things that you're think of the things that you're passionate about. Don't just think, "Well, I should be able to do crime." Well, if you're not into crime, if you don't vibe crime, they're gonna hear it.
Yeah.
But you obviously, with your passion for sports, your expertise and all that, such a great fit.
I'm glad you touched on that because I think for a lot of talent who are looking to get into narration, um I don't think anyone has really broken it down to say, hey, just because you got an audition for, you know, the Cowboys and the Miners back in 1849, that you be great for it. So in your opinion, what makes a great storyteller, and how do you determine, and I know part of it is saying, yeah, I'm interested in this particular
Mhm,
subject, but what if you're not necessarily interested, but you read some of the copy and like, this is a pretty good story. I like to take a crack at telling this. So how do you balance, reading for something that you'll enjoy, or it's something that's near and dear to you versus your agent says, hey, we got a thing, maybe not necessarily in your warehouse, but maybe not the type of subject matter you're used to,
mhm.
but check it out, see if you like it. Like, how do you balance that?
You you brought up a good point, and I'm gonna tell you that the first docuseries I did, which Clinton was president, that's how old that goes back.
Oh, wow, I was a
It was
senior in
yeah,
high school.
it was called World of Wonder, and the
I
direct
remember that.
okay, the director would say, "I like what you're doing with this, just keep learning stuff. Every time you sound like you're learning something new and you're sharing it, that's what I dig."
Mhm.
And I use that as my mantra on that series. I think if you're not, for example, if you're not a car guy, but you're interested learning how cars run,
Yeah,
that's great to be able to do a deep dive on it. To be able to say, "I'm gonna learn about the pistons and what that is, and then how it's attached to the suspension or the gear shifts and, whatever."
mhm.
But, so I say, if you can learn something and regurgitate it, read for it. I mean, at least lean toward reading for it. Um, my thing is, um, you pointed about, talking about the West and stuff like that. Well, I'll be honest with you that when I get like even a commercial audition and I see the prototypes on there and
Mhm.
I'm saying, okay, Donald Glover, Common, Michael P. Jordan, and I wanna say, "Have you met me?" But dude, we know that they blast out a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So, my thing is, here we go. My thing would be, if I see a prototype like that, I'm probably going to say, "You know what? I don't think so." But if I don't see a prototype, and let's say it's something about a jazz great, and let's say it's Miles Davis. Well, this
Mhm.
white guy loves Miles Davis, so my passion will come through. Now, whether they decide to use a black VO or not, at least I won't embarrass myself in terms
Gotcha,
of my understanding of jazz or my give a shit factor. So,
gotcha.
um, I also think that I tell people, "Don't worry about being the age demographic. Consider, can you speak to that age demographic with respect?"
That's
So,
something I struggle with. Yes.
well, I think, I think younger people will take history from an older person, and I don't consider you old, okay? But, you're not a millennial or a Gen Z. But Who am I gonna listen to on a documentary about the Vietnam War?
Right.
Am I gonna listen to you, or am I gonna listen to a 22-year-old who's got an interesting voice? I'm gonna listen to you
Yeah.
because maybe you have enough grit, you have enough experience, life experience, enough resonance. Maybe it was affected, maybe one of your parents or an aunt or an uncle, you know,
My dad.
you was your okay, your dad was in the service, there you go, and I pull from my father WW2.
There
I
you
never
go.
served in the military, but I've got great respect for military, so I guess what I'm saying is a lot of different factors to examine the material, see where the give a shit factor is for you. If it's high, then go for it. The other thing that makes a good storyteller, and I've been harping on this a lot lately, so I hope you don't mind if I repeat something that maybe I said in Atlanta.
Speak your truth, man.
Okay, thank you. Is the but factor, the purpose of the documentary,
Uh,
i.e., we know Lincoln was assassinated. We know he was assassinated by John Wilkes Booth. But did you know that his younger brother was also involved,
mm,
intricately involved? That's how to get History Channel to pull the lever and say, "Yeah, we'll produce this show. We'll air this show." When they're looking for topics that we know, but we're looking at a different wrinkle. So I've always tried to tell people to be a good storyteller, you need to know the purpose of the writer's intention.
yeah.
And I think that goes for whether you're doing an audiobook. I'll even say from a writing standpoint, when I
Mm,
write, the biggest comment that I'll get from writer friends of mine, they'll say, um, you know, where's the challenge? A little more challenge in there before we have the happy ending, Pinto. We need something to happen to this guy so he'll get his comeuppance, so then maybe he'll change a little bit.
yeah.
So, I try to, as a writer now, since I've been writing again for the last decade or so, I'm a better narrator because I have more respect for the written word. That's my long-winded point. Have more respect for the written word on TV narration because it's not like it's a person who has to write a 25-second spot for McDonald's, and I say 25 because we know 5 seconds goes to ba-da-ba-ba-ba, right?
Yeah.
It's not a story. It's not really a story. It's a short story, and it's a short story with an end user. But we're talking for an hour. You need to be able to sustain the character and understand in each act we are leading to what? Proof of what Wilkes Booth's brother did. Or
Yeah.
if it's a documentary about the Vatican, all the different things that the Vatican has been involved with in history that perhaps you didn't know about that, including there are references to civil war. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole right now, but that truly was a particular aspect of a documentary. So
Wow.
to sift through and understand the purpose of what's going to make that show stand out,
Mhm.
what's going to make people say, "Oh, here's another show about the bison." Different angle. Not just better footage, different angle. Maybe like, "Wait a minute, this isn't the bison in Yellowstone. This is the bison way up in the Arctic Circle. Let's find out their story. Let's find out the
Mhm.
situation why they may not be in as greater numbers as before." So, I think a good storyteller finds the but factor. But meaning that but there's other words that you can find in the scripts. Although, while, how
However.
there yeah, baby, alright. Exactly,
Yeah.
because we know the damn thing's gonna pivot there. So I'm always
That's
looking through the script going, "Aha, there it is. Aha, there it is."
so I wanna go back to because I am being educated right now. Uh, you say this term often, and I want you to define the give a shit factor.
Okay. In TV narration, The unfortunate thing is, when I say unfortunate, many people grew up watching their first documentaries on PBS.
Yeah.
PBS was the source. Now, sometimes somebody may say, "Well, there was a wonderful documentary in the theater," and then you go out and maybe you go rent it from, I know I'm dating myself, you rent it from Blockbuster, or
Oh,
even go
hey.
even go online and you
Yeah.
buy the damn thing for 19.99. So, PBS is able to, because of corporate funding, to use more understated narrators
Mhm.
to allow all those beautiful, exceptional, and sumptuous pictures when it comes to nature or history to have a narrator such as somebody like on the show Frontline. Will Lyman is
Yeah.
he's right down the middle because he doesn't want to offend the left or the
Or
right.
the right. Yeah.
So,
You're right.
but PBS doesn't have to worry about ratings. They just have to worry about corporate donations. So
Yeah.
when they've got those people shelling out big money as well as the other people, who shell out the small money,
Mhm.
they're not worried. They don't worry about ratings. They worry about funding. But Discovery, Smithsonian, Nat Geo,
Mhm.
Velocity, ESPN, A&E, History, Lifetime, they need ratings. So each of those networks try to make sure that there is some kind of point of view. There is something that is going to keep people from changing the channel because remember, they're fighting commercials, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why cold opens on on um on anything that airs on cable networks need to be 10 degrees juicier, more of a give a shit factor to say this is what you're going to see in the next 48 hours and
Gotcha.
and ensure that we get it. That's really what the gas factor is that
Cool.
it's okay to put your POV. I mean, to have a little swagger about, I don't know, I remember watching the 30 for 30 on Allen Iverson, and you know
Yeah.
what? It's kinda like, of course he's a bad boy. Of course he came up from here. Of course he had his thing about, "What are you talking about? Practice, practice, practice," and all that stuff. You know what? That needed a narrator who was okay with the rebellion,
Mhm.
who would comment and say he was a rebel, but he also turned around and scored 38 points and had 11 assists.
Wasn't that Chuck D who narrated
I
that?
think so. I think you're right.
Yep. Yeah.
So, um, especially on an audition where you don't have music or pictures to support you, it's even more important that the audition might have a little more grab factor than you actually end up executing in the session itself. I
Yeah.
you know, because otherwise it could lay there.
Mhm.
So I always tell people, look at those turns, look at the butt factor, look for here's another thing. Look for the change in time. Are we going back in time? Are we going forward in time? Look for the change in scenery. If it's a nature thing, do we go from Buenos Aires to do we finally go down to Santiago, Chile? Type of thing. Let's feel the shift in location, in time, and of course, content.
Yeah.
So I hope that helps you a little bit there.
No, that helps me. I almost feel like I should be paying you because this is a class. I'm like, because when I get auditions for narration, and it's usually for Discovery, History, or
Mhm.
sometimes they don't say the network because like this is it might be a pilot narration.
Exactly,
Um,
and many times I'll send a note, "Do you know what the network is?" They'll say, "No network." Then I will look up the production company if I can, because sometimes it'll say, "Here's something in production," and then you can find out which networks do they like to work with. I mean, you can try, but sometimes you have to say, "Hey, Trey, this might sound good on this particular network." So, I mean, you know, and that's why I also tell people, you should have heard me in Atlanta. People laughed, but I think some of it, and I don't know if they were offended, but I said, "Okay, all of you who cut cable, get it back."
Yeah,
Because I said, "You gotta be familiar with what's out there."
it's true.
You do. You know, write it off. Write it off, you know?
That's what I do.
That's
I write all of my subscriptions, I write them off
yeah.
because they're for my business. Even for the video game subscriptions, if
Mhm.
I'm trying to figure out the what's the latest and greatest in voices and characters, then I subscribe and download games and play them.
Yeah.
I have a couple of streaming services. I got Max and HBO, and because I think of out of all the medium that is out there for me,
Mhm.
um video games, animation, and narration, to me, are very important. Promo as well, but those three, because in each of those pieces of medium, somebody is going to either at the beginning or at the end, they're going to tell a story, and I
Yeah.
want to hear how it unfolds. That one of my favorite video games, it's called it's a Batman game. It's called Arkham Knight.
Mm.
At the very beginning, there's a guy and he's narrating, but it's coming from the character of, let's say you and I are sitting in the room.
A first
Yes,
person
a first,
narrative. I love first person
and
narrative.
this guy
It's
walks in
yeah.
and he's basically, I'm visualizing him sitting there with a cigar or a cigarette and he has a drink and he just goes, "Let me tell you about the day that Joker died." And
Mm,
it's like, "Okay, so tell me." But now, in order for you to know, you have to play the game.
mm.
So that's where the interaction is. Um, how do you feel about um when you get a you get a so there's a new series
Mhm.
and they say, okay, this is kind of the feel of this show. It's not exactly crime story, but there may be some elements of crime story,
Mhm.
but it's historical, but it's not your run of the mill History Channel Vikings kind of thing. Do you ever run into where the genres will clash?
Yeah, and I think more and more networks are doing that because they're trying to steal from other networks. I mean, no, no, seriously, think about this. I'm trying to remember the name of the show. That the Travel Channel's most popular show, highly rated show, has nothing to do with travel. But what do they care? They went and they did a spinoff of that particular show.
Huh.
So when you start looking at those multiple elements, it's a great question, and I'll just tell you this. Hopefully, the audition copy will allow you to demonstrate, "Hi, this is the historical perspective." Then you're able to get into the dirty details, about, whatever it may be. Or you can talk about another factor if it's an expert has just got done talking and you c or and maybe you're going to set up the following expert about what his or her opinion is. But those multi-layered stories require, multi-layers in the narrative process.
Yeah.
And, you know, unfortunately, Trey, not all auditions are outlined that way. Just off the top of my head, I recall one that I use in teaching from time to time that it starts with pulling people into the show about, celebrities and about
Mhm.
celebrity stardom falling off from celebrity, about its fleeting, about its
Yeah.
highs, and there's lows. So you've got multiple layers here. You've got the glitz and the glamour of Hollywood, and they said cold open, energy, blah, 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 right? Good energy. But then the next two sections, the second section, they got into the trouble that those celebrities did.
Hmm.
Okay? Trouble. I'm just going to say that carefully. Just it was only about the trouble. Maybe it was about the court, this and that. Then at the end, it said more somber recapitulation. Well, they had stories of three people who died within 6 months who had been on the show, Celebrity Intervention. One
Wow.
was Alice in Chains' bassist. One was Rodney King, who committed, unfortunately, suicide toward the end, and Jeff Conaway, who was in Greek.
I was just about to say,
Right.
Kaniki was on there too,
Kaniki,
Jeff
right.
Conaway.
So
Yeah.
and they were all on that particular season. So I got a chance, and I didn't book it, but I got a chance. I said, "Well, guess what? It's up to me." They're laying out, okay, how are you gonna promote the show? How are you gonna work with facts and make facts interesting about the legal aspect? And how are you gonna show compassion for the people that passed away? What more
Mm,
can you ask for? But they
right.
don't always do it. So I tell people, be careful when they give you isolated paragraphs. If you find yourself saying, this isn't connected to this, say, yes, it isn't. It's in a different part of the show. Think about what leads into that new paragraph, how you would pivot to it. Make it sound like it comes it later on in the show. Don't just keep talking because, "Oh, I'm good. I'm not flubbing. I'm not flubbing. I'm on a roll. I'm gonna keep narrating."
Yeah.
That's what you do on 50-page medical narrations where you say, "Dear Lord, I just need to be done with this thing, and I need to get out of here." You know what I mean? So
Oh, yes, been there. Um, a quick intersection.
yes.
Uh, promo work.
Mhm.
And I might be pretentious in saying this, but dare I say, promo work could be like the little brother to narration?
Promo work is the little brother to reality series narration.
Ah, okay, here we go.
Because when you audition for a reality series, most of the time they just include the cold open.
Yeah,
Why? Because in the rest of the show, you're gonna say things like "coming up" or "next," and then or you'll come into in the beginning of each act, you'll recap what the
ah,
motorheads did going back and forth, trying to see
yeah,
who's going to fix this 64 remodel this 64 Chevy faster than the other team, right?
mhm,
So, reality series don't always entail a lot of storytelling, but we do need an in-show narrator to be the thread. And
yeah,
that's really where the term in-show narrator comes from. It doesn't come from documentarians. It doesn't come from people doing docuseries because when you do a documentary or docuseries, hey, bro, we're doing the heavy lifting.
yeah,
We're the ones with the 35, 40 pages. But when you do a reality series, you get the script, 3, 4 pages, 16-point type. I'll be done with this in 20 minutes. Of course you will. But
yeah,
if you can take your like you said, the elements of promo, we establish what's going on, we give them some details, we tell them what might be the funky part of the show, the purpose, and then we tag it out, right?
yep,
If you do that on an episode of, Law& and Order SVU for drama, if you're doing the 20-second of course, Dorian Harewood's doing the 20-second
yeah, well,
part,
yeah.
of course, I'm not gonna mess, "Hey, good
No,
guy
sir.
good guy, couldn't
Mr. NBC himself.
have happened to a nicer guy too, trust me. Just a ch Nick O'Mana, who used to work for me, put
Hey, I
together
know Nick.
you know Nick O'Mana put together Dorian's first VO demo, and I
Really?
remember listening to it, "God, he's good," and Nick said, "I just want this guy to work because it's been slim pickings since Roots."
Right.
The good guys
Yeah.
win one. The good guys win. Anyway, but, you establish, you say, Thursday, blah, 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 blah. Then there's a sound bite. And then, and this and this and this is gonna happen. And then there's another sound bite. But will it end up losing one of Law& and Order's very own? "Oh my god, what happened?" Law& and
Yep.
Order SVU, right? So, the structure is similar, but longer for reality series cold opens, whether they're competitive or even if it's something like, Sale of Two Cities, where 2 different couples are looking to buy. One's looking at Nashville, Tennessee, one's looking at Seattle. They both have a budget of 400,000. See what they get.
Yeah.
So, it's actually a good observation, my man.
I I do my homework sometimes. I do my homework sometimes. Um, so being a narrator and storyteller yourself, growing up, um, who were some of the folks that, caught your eyes and ears and may have got you on the path to this? Was this something you always wanted to do? Were you an announcer of any type? Like, what's young Tom like?
Young Tom was scared shitless of
Huh,
long form narration. Young Tom did a lot of coming of age movie trailers, which as we both know, aren't lengthy, but paid very well.
indeed.
Young Tom did Saturday morning bumpers for Hanna-Barbera.
Huh.
"We now return to Pound Puppies," that kind of thing. I
That's
know, I know.
crazy.
So and commercials, the warm and friendly thing. So, but when you talk about somebody, I'm going, "Oh god, I could listen to him all day." An actor who's no longer with us, Richard Kiley, did a lot of stuff.
Oh,
Richard Kiley was, like, in the Thornbirds, he played the father.
yeah.
What a beautiful voice, and I remember just sitting on my couch during the days of, your VCR, and I'd say, "Don't erase that tape to record your soap operas. This documentary is really good." And then I looked at the end, it's Richard Kiley, and I go, "Why am I familiar?" And then, you find out, wait a minute, that's Richard Kiley from the beautiful voice, great, great style. The other one is Peter Thomas, who
Mm.
only passed away maybe 5 or 6 years ago
Rest his soul, and was still working
and
at
was
91 years
I
old.
know, he was doing those, was it the Forensic
Uh,
File stuff?
Forensic Files, yeah.
Yeah. So, Peter Thomas had a voice that cut like butter. You know what I
I
mean?
mean, yes,
And
I know exactly what you mean
so,
because
those were kind of storytelling heroes younger, but truthfully, I think we're all influenced by people, but after I did World of Wonder, I actually got to audition for and I remember looking at it. Maybe we're kind of circling the wagon here about you saying, "What if you're not familiar with it?" It was a show called Tales of the Gun, and I'm going,
mm,
"I'm not big on guns. I don't own a gun. I've only shot a gun a couple of times at the range."
yeah,
And, but it was from a historical perspective. So, Lee Gilbert, was probably in the booth that day, directing, and she said, "You know what? Just, make it interesting about, how they put together the guns or the history of this." Or my favorite part, which is one of the reasons why I booked it, is they had an additional section that talked about the gun that killed, here we go, Lincoln.
Lincoln.
So I didn't have to talk about how the gun is put together or what kind of ammunition or how powerful it was. It was how much that gun sold for at auction.
Oh,
All right,
okay.
I booked the job, and
Huh.
I found out later why I booked the job, because the person who they wanted to do it, who was a celebrity, was a member of the NRA, and they wanted to make sure that this was a little more historical. So I had to
Oh.
sign something saying I'm not a member of the NRA, and I enjoyed that show, but I wanted to get better in terms of historical gravitas. So
Mhm.
it was Peter Coyote.
Really?
It was Peter no,
Wow.
no, no, what I'm saying is Peter Coyote was my influence
Oh, okay, gotcha,
to
gotcha,
hear
gotcha.
how he was already, let's face it, Peter Coyote is a man who's got a lot of, he doesn't do projects he doesn't want to do. I'm talking
Yeah.
about acting projects,
Yeah, no,
okay?
you're right.
Right. He's got high standards, he's very passionate, he's very political, not working with him, he's a commie, the not commie, he's a fascist, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But he narrates a lot of things because most of the time, they're projects about, "Let's save the planet. Let's stop racism. Let's stop, anti-Semitism." I mean, he did by the way,
Mm.
he did such good work on on a recent, documentary about the Jews, the
Mhm.
Holocaust, the Ken Burns thing, just
Yeah.
fabulous. But anyhow, not that I would try to, try to do the Peter but I stole a little bit of the melody. I stole a little bit of the soft landing on a poignant point and not,
Yeah.
not, hitting it on the nose too hard.
Not a blatant theft of it.
Yeah,
You know,
and then it continues for me like listening to, I'm sorry, Liev Schreiber.
I was about you I
My
was
mouth.
about to so, if I may, I hate
Go
to
for it,
interrupt
go for it.
the guest. So, I'm gonna answer the question I asked you as far as people yet you listened to growing up. Um, for me, and we've already, tapped on, the late great Peter Thomas. Keith David,
Oh, man.
um, and I have had some corporate folk reach out because I do sound alikes for him, but I remember the first, uh network narration that I did. It was for a small cable network called Daystar, a
Okay.
Christian network, and they were honoring Dr. Martin Luther King. And just growing up, speaking of Ed Burns, a lot of his documentaries, Keith David did and still does, if I'm not mistaken.
Daz.
And
Absolutely, yeah.
I was so like this guy's voice. And as I got older and all of a sudden my voice changed, there were certain people I would try to mimic. And one day I mimicked him like I kind of sound, but
There you go.
I wasn't even thinking about VO then. I was just because I'm just a natural mimic for certain people. But then as I got into VO and I was watching something one day that he was doing, and I'm like, I wonder if I could, because I hadn't done it in a while. And I'm like, now that my voice is more mature,
Yeah.
I just kind of got down right here. And I channeled Keith David as best I could. And my friend was like, "Dude,
And
like
you know what you
you."
did? You know what you just did there besides the voice and the attitude? Keith David is deceptively good at enunciating things and making them a little sharper,
That
so
is
those
correct.
points cut
Mhm.
through. I
Yeah.
mean, the man, his TV, excuse me, Navy, BMW on the commercial
Baby.
thing,
Acceleration.
documentaries,
Yeah,
great,
that was the one. Yeah.
Platoon, drama,
Y
comedy. He,
you name it. He
th
checks every box,
he
man.
can do anything, and really, I mean, I teach a class called Prototypes, and guess who's on the list?
Oh, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
I am
yeah.
sure.
Absolutely. So I could understand
Yeah.
why.
So he was my I had my list of folks, and when I got this copy, and I remember I just kept saying in my head, like, how would he do this? But not to straight copy him,
Right.
but I'm thinking, you know, number one, this is something that's near and dear to me because Martin Luther King and my sister share the same birthday. So
Okay.
I'm like, all right, so this is so now I'm pulling in family. How would the family feel knowing I did something about Dr. King? From a community and cultural standpoint, like I get to do something for my people. So all these things are starting to pour into me, but now
Isn't that
I have
nice?
to regurgitate and like, how do I want it to sound? Because then I really hadn't defined what my sound was. So I was nibbling at the table of Keith David and maybe nibbling at the table of Liev Schreiber, and maybe, get a portion of whomever, like just samples, but I still hadn't found me.
Exactly.
And
But you know what? I always tell people when they take this class, and I'm not trying to pimp this prototypes class, but I'm just saying, I said it's not about imitation, it's about integration. Circle A is
I
Keith,
like it.
circle B is Trey. Where's the intersection? That intersection is probably going to be the most organic and the most viable for that read, to where they won't be saying, "Oh, he's just doing Keith David." They're gonna say, "Oh god, he sounds sort of a little like a younger Keith David." You know what I mean? And there's a difference
Oh yeah.
to that reaction. And look, we all have heroes. We all have people that we're continually influenced by. I mean, there's how many young actors are out there who watch Brando films or watch De Niro or something like that. I mean, we're lifting from styles, but yes, then it has to be us. And I will tell you that one of the best, I'm saying best, but I'm also going to say, I'll say this, one of the most successful trailer people in the 80s and 90s, good close to 20-year run, John Leader. And John
Yes.
and John Leader got his start because he sort of was able to channel a little bit of another narrator by the name of Tim McIntyre, who had this kind of
Very lift
edgy, you know
voice.
what I mean,
Yeah.
like that. So it was airy and sharp, and it didn't sound like all the heavy, guys who would say, Columbia Pictures presents. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which if you go back and you listen to a lot of those trailers in the early '70s, mm, a new film with blah, 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 and blah, 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 okay?
Yeah.
But Tim had this thing in there. John sort of did a fairly good knockoff. But
He
what
did.
happened as he started to work, and the longer he worked, and the more people got comfortable with him, he started sounding a little more like him. The best of Tim McIntyre and the best of John Leader. And he ended up being basically the voice of distinction for Universal Pictures,
He was all their feel good movies and stuff, and
and that too. So
mm, yeah.
Universal would say it's not an important movie unless John was doing the trailer. So when Howard, what was his name? When Howard Stern had his movie Private Parts,
Mhm.
the opening to the promo was just a scroll, and there was John. Universal Pictures presents the most important film of 2020, or whatever year it was,
I think it's like
2020. That
1990 or
whatever, and then all of a sudden you heard the fart, and he goes, "Oh, Baba Booey, why did you do that?" And then, of course, then the hijinks. But you
yeah.
see, he was so recognized as the voice of distinction for that, that they used him for comedic benefit. Anyway, you have good influences there, dude, absolutely. That's good
I
stuff.
I do my best, man, because, you know, one thing about our business and what we do, it is a never-ending classroom.
Yeah,
Um, you have
evolving.
to you have to always, um look back to go forward, I feel. Um, and, listening to those guys, listening to you, Bo Weaver.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, yeah.
Matter of fact, he does one of my favorite shows. They talk about dog fights in the air superiority.
Mhm.
And, you know, I don't know, it's something about this particular um, form of voiceover more than anything to me. Um, Being able to just create and help the pictures move along and tell the
Yeah.
story. And I found it interesting that you said you were scared to do this, being that you're so good at it.
Well,
When did the light bulb come on and say, "Okay, they're starting to give me this stuff."
when you get older and you start relaxing a little bit and by the way, also here this is brutally honest, that it's like you go into a session and you go, "Oh, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute, we're gonna do 1 graph at a time? Ah." Nobody's gonna let you go 3, 4 pages without stopping.
Yeah.
They want a specific flavor and time
Mhm.
on each cell. Now, people say, "Well, isn't it a little disjointed?" Do you find it a little disjointed? If you've read the script ahead of time and you know where the hell you're going, and you're experienced enough to match,
Right.
okay? I know I'm coming off paragraph 2 where I was a little more lighthearted, so when I come in on paragraph 3, that's a little sadder. Don't go too sad because then you'll sound like a different person.
Right.
And many times I'll even say to the producer, "Do you mind if I lead in?" "Hey, no problem." As long as you leave a, blade
Yeah.
room on that. So, you know, I think eventually and also, again, I can just say even in the past decade or so, my attention span, my focus is even greater, partly because of my work of my own writing. So you
Mhm.
know what I see, Trey? I see beginning, middle, and end
Yeah.
even in every long ass sentence. I don't like go, "Okay, I gotta get through this long sentence." I go, "No, wait. Someone did something, and this was the result. This disease, subject, spread where? Throughout Africa. Boom, 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 boom." That's where your nanobeats are going to be. So if you're concerned about breathing, linguistically speaking, the nanobeat should come, between subject, verb, direct object, verb, prepositional phrase. And, it's interesting because in Atlanta, there was a young man in there and he says, "I love what you just said because I'm an English teacher and I'm trying to get people to work on their grammar on that. And I always harp on that." So,
Wow.
and I said, "Well, your read, you just demonstrated your knowledge by not taking a beat where you needed to breathe, but creating your beats because you're trying to help your audience to
Mhm.
digest the information."
Yeah.
And you're so right. Let me just say this. When I my mother, may she rest in peace, "I can't hear you on the CBS Evening News. You're always talking so fast and then it's done." And I go, "Mom, that's my cash cow.
That's right.
Please throw out the good juju." "I am, but I just wish you had something." And then suddenly my mother watched Arlington National Cemetery documentary on Smithsonian, and the
Oh, she
next
got
time
to hear.
and she goes, "I'm so proud of you."
Ain't that cool?
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it was something. That's what I think you're feeling.
Mhm.
When you did something for the MLK Day, if that's what it was,
Yeah.
you were doing something that was passionate, you connected because of your sister, you connected because of the man, you connected because of your community, and you get paid.
Can't beat that. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Anyway,
Yeah,
so
man. I don't know, my mom is like that too when, like, promos or commercials come on, they're so quick, tonight 8/7 Central on ABC, and there's like, "Ew," it's gone. But if I tell them, "Hey, I'm gonna be like this thing, she happened to see it, and, my mom is not, she's now she taught for 40 years, and I think she's all talked out, so she's not a woman of many words,
Okay,
but you can tell when she's proud of something that I've done.
and
She'll
that's
she'll
nice.
she'll write it down before she'll say it, but, yeah, it's a cool thing to be recognized, by family and friends who can acknowledge and appreciate, and they
Yeah,
see, because I think sometimes in this business, when we do what we do, a lot of folks don't understand the why,
mhm.
or it's like, well, you just kind of sit there and talk all day. I'm like, well, no, it's a little more than that. It's a little more than that, sir or
I
ma'am.
know, I know. It's funny because my sister, one time she was in town, this was years ago, okay, and she came in from Thousand Oaks, and we were gonna have lunch, and I said, "Why don't you come to me to one of my sessions?" And she came. She goes, oh my god, they asked you to shave half a second, you were able to shave a half a second.
Yeah,
Oh my god, they said they wanted something different, and you kinda moved on it, and you were so professional, Tommy." And it's like, she meant it as a compliment,
sure.
but she was surprised at her brother being yeah, they don't always get all the work that goes into it, and you said something earlier about narration, animation, and video games. It's acting. That's really what it
Yes.
is. Good storytelling is in its own way.
Hmm.
It's acting. And then somebody says, "Well, you're making all this money and you talk for 15 seconds." Well, do you know how many people had to audition for that in order to get it? Do you know that there's somebody in an ivory tower in NBC going, do I want this Tre Mosley guy or not?"
Right.
And that's an accomplishment. So,
It is.
we know that, and it's just we try to educate others when we can, but you're right, the storytelling does resonate with people, that because they hear that you are more than just a good voice, but that you're a good interpreter.
Yeah. Who are some of the voices now, that are, the who that you would say would be the next generation of our great storytellers?
Well, you know what? When I say next generation, I think he's current generation and he's gonna continue, but I think Dan Nachtraub,
Oh,
y
that's my buddy.
yeah,
Yeah.
Dan is one of the busiest working stiff narrators out there. And I say that because, so many of the spoils go to celebrities, but it's not like his voice goes all over the place and does stuff, but he finds the nuances of each project he works on, and of course, he's got such a professional and approachable style that a lot of people, they wanna work with him. Um, I'll actually tell you that, there's a few women who Marie Westbrook, who's
Ah,
on with At
know her
Atlas,
too. Yeah.
and outstanding storyteller.
Yes,
Really,
Maria,
I mean,
she's awesome.
she really gets, the nuances on that stuff.
Yeah.
And when I say next generation, but like Nancy Lenari finally decided to put together a TV narration demo, and she's fabulous as well. Um, you know, Erica J. Erica J. Oh, she gives me way too much credit. She took like 4 or 5 lessons, and I prepped her for her demo, and we were up there in Atlanta, and the writer was asking questions, and she talked before me, and she says, "Well, I did this, and I did this because of blah, 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 and Pinto said for me to do this, and that's what I learned from him." And then she goes, "Tom, what do you do?" And I went, "What she said." I was so proud. I was so
Yeah.
flattered, and I think she's gonna continue to go there. Karin Gilfrey
Yes.
has got it. Um, I think part of it is younger people need to get the opportunities. Jordan Reynolds
Mhm.
does a fine job as well, and, it's just, it's about getting the opportunities, working on the series, and older voices are gonna be doing more of the documentary, but I think there's gonna be a tipping point where they say, like, on nature pieces, where they're okay with a slightly younger voice. I heard a young man, and I'm sorry that I can't remember his name, but he was doing a nature documentary. I looked him up. I didn't even recognize him, but he's been on a couple of soaps and a couple series, but he was terrific.
Wow.
N Yes, maybe he's in the celebrity category, but, we do need some younger narrators too. And of course, we need to continue to find good stuff for Trey. You know what? I
I'll
ha
take it.
you know what? I'll 'cause you love sports. My best friend from college, his son, who's like another godson to me, when he graduated from San Jose State, he immediately started interning at KMBR San Francisco, and then he was working for the other radio station and then doing this. And then he worked for like 12 years at Bay Area Sports. And we'd get together and my buddy Rick would say, "Hey, when are you gonna get some work for Uncle Tommy?" He goes, "Well, a lot of the little documentary specials we do, we don't use narrators." So, but guess what? He's now at NFL Films.
Oh, boy.
Okay, so Chris Jones. Oops, the cat's out of the bag.
I'm just saying.
Everybody with a demo. Anyway, and Chris also is a former high school football player, so he's like, I think football's his.
Yeah.
He knows all the sports, but it's really big. But, anyway, I listen, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to kind of, spew forth my views and my history. I don't wanna sound like an old fart because you're right, we have to keep evolving.
Yeah.
Trends change,
They
you
do.
know? I mean,
They do.
Jeff Bridges was the flavor of the month over a decade ago, but no more,
Yeah.
but he had a great run. But now what's the next flavor when they're looking for stuff like that? Who knows?
I hope it's chocolate, but, that's another story.
It could be
But,
well, excuse me.
yes, sir.
What you need to do is you need to get Sterling K. Brown on more movies because
Oh,
therefore he's
yeah.
not only too busy, but he's priced out of the market. That's that's the other
That's my guy, man.
that's the other black voice out there who can just as soon as I hear him talk about something, I'm sitting back. He's just
Yeah.
got that vibe.
He does. SKB, if you ever watch this podcast, or we may just cut that clip just for you. I'm just saying, bro, we need to just let's talk. I'm just,
I
just
love
saying.
it. I absolutely.
All
Anytime.
right.
You know you know where I live. We'll
As
talk
that is correct, sir.
we'll
I
talk
will
about
come
our
in.
agents, but not let them know we're talking about them. Okay?
All right,
Alright.
time for my favorite part of the show as we close out. On the Take Time Out with Trey podcast, we like to, give folks some insight about this business and the befores and afters, the highs and
Mm,
lows. But when the cameras are off and the mics are off and we're out of the booth,
mhm.
now I may know part of this question because I follow you a lot on social media, but how
Uh,
does Mr. Thom Pinto take time out for himself?
gardening. I love you know what? How do I put it? The Dago surged in me later in life, My dad loved gardening too, but then it wasn't until I was probably in my 40s, that I really started getting more involved, and my dad was still alive, so he'd come over and he'd go, "No, no, 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 you don't wanna plant that there, you wanna plant that over here, the drainage isn't gonna work," and all that, so, uh, but I love it, and my wife loves it too, but we have kind of a system in our house. She points, I plant. And the thing is about gardening too, though, is that there's always time to refresh. There's always time to, you know what? Well, that isn't gonna work all year round, so I need to plan something else. Um, I have to limit what I do. I have to now buy, 1-liter bags of soil because I can't carry 2-liter bags of soil, but I enjoy it. it just and also, veggie garden's gonna be coming up here pretty soon. So,
Nice.
I can't play tennis as much as I used to because of the knees and everything else, but I do enjoy that. That's, and the writing. So,
Now, Tom, Tom,
yes, sir.
as much food as I see you post, sir, I'm surprised you did not say anything about your cuisine. So I'm gonna put it out there. This man, Mr. Thom Pinto, can throw it down.
You know what? My wife's a much better cook than me, but I did work at my dad's pizza place as a teenager. Okay? Pizza, spaghetti, subs, lasagna. I mean, I grated cheese. I fried sausage and
Ah,
pepper sandwiches, brother. I know. And, my wife and I will go back and forth about the sauce, what to do. Um, I absolutely love eggplant appetizers, so we'll make that. We
my
are
wife
going
made eggplant lasagna, just to let you know.
and guess what? You know what? Eggplant lasagna is healthier
Yes.
and it's tasty. My wife actually did not fry the sliced eggplant a couple of weeks ago. She lightly breaded it and she baked it.
Yeah.
And
That's
it
what she
was
does.
really good. You put you put your tomato sauce on there. And yes, we've got frozen sauce so my wife will say, "Well, what do you want tomorrow?" I go, I'm in the mood for sauce." Well, that's easy, to kind of defrost that, especially when it's your own homemade stuff. So I do enjoy and I enjoy the baking.
Mhm.
My wife does most of it, but, I'm always there, helping her to roll out the dough and stuff like that, and I also I'll say it again, do that, make a really if you like pesto, I'm really good with pesto.
So we're gonna end it right there because A, I gotta hop on a thing, but
You do?
we're gonna continue this conversation, sir.
Okay.
Tell the folks how to reach you on the social media so they can keep up with you and your website as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's under Tom Pinto on Facebook, it's under Pinto Pipes on Insta. My website is Thompinto because that's the name legally I had to use when I joined SAG-AFTRA many years ago. That's the way to reach me in terms of they'll see my work. My email address is there in case they're interested in lessons. I only do a limited number of lessons, and I do prioritize to people who are currently with agents who get it. So then I have to I do that tier, and then I work with other people. Also, maybe they've been recommended by other coaches, but that would be a great place to go in order to reach out. But anyway,
Oh.
go crush this callback.
Yes. I am go I w well, by the time this airs, who knows?
Yeah,
Uh,
you got your
Thank you all for
got
watching.
got your
Hey,
juices rolling, man.
that's right.
Okay.
I'm hyped up. Mr. Thom Pinto, a pleasure, sir. I will be visiting you very soon. And thank you all for watching this episode, and we will see you next time. Take some time out for yourself. Thanks for listening to the Take Time Out with Tre Mosley podcast, part of the Titan Media Network. You can find us on Spotify, Apple, iHeart, or wherever you get your podcasts. To see the video version of this, you can find us on YouTube on the Take Time Out with Tre Mosley YouTube page. Thanks for listening, or thanks for watching. Either way, we'll see you next time.